Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Liverpool, and although I've brought you here before, I am back in the Baltic Triangle. And the Baltic Triangle, I'm spoiling you this week because I'm not giving you just one piece of history, I'm giving you two bits of historical information. The Baltic Triangle is so called because of the trading links that Liverpool used to have with the Baltic states. That's Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia. And also Norway. I believe that the biggest import from that whole area was probably timber, and a good deal of Nordic and Eastern Baltic Sea inhabitants, seamen, actually settled here in Liverpool. And we do actually have a Nordic church, which I'm hoping to take a photograph of and show you a little bit later. So the 18th and 19th century warehouses that you can see, those that survived the Blitz of the Second World War, the vast majority have now been completely converted or in some cases rebuilt, and they are home to a variety of businesses, in the main artistic and creative. It's kind of our very own little Silicon Valley here in Liverpool. This is a well photographed warehouse building, the Queen's sailmaking and ship's chandlers warehouse, now very much derelict, but you can see that right next door to it, one of our relatively new enterprises, Love Lane Brewery. There are a lot of bars and restaurants in the area now as well. Now, going back maybe 20 or 30 years, this whole area was really derelict, or very nearly. Most of the old warehouse units lay empty. Now there's a fantastic mix of both apartments, bars and restaurants, as I say, and tech buildings, tech entrepreneurs, that's the correct expression, I think. So it's good to see. And what's also good to see is the fact that the new builds have been forced to at least pay homage to the original look of the warehouses. I'll just show you this one across the road. And you can see that the first 3 floors are the original, probably Victorian warehouse. And up on top, they've extended it with another 3 modern floors. Well, now, that's part one of the history, I guess. The fact that it's called the Baltic Triangle because of those trade associations and the numbers of seamen that would have settled here. It's not a bad place to settle, I'll be perfectly honest with you. However, that's part one of the history today. Part 2, why have I decided to come down to the Baltic Triangle? Because I've brought you down here before. I come down here quite often. Why now? Well, it's as near as I can get to the USSR, or Russia. The Baltic states are just about as close as you can get. They were, of course, at one time part of the USSR. They're now independent, which is fantastic. But I have recently invested in my oldest ever lens, and it is a Russian lens, and it dates from around about 1935. I can't be more exact than that because the serial number situation is a little bit murky. I've got it on the A7. There it is. I'll put some close-ups on for you later so you can have a good look at it. And it is the 50mm f3.5 Fed 10. Now, Fed, I didn't realise until I started to look into all this just exactly how fascinating the story of the Russian camera industry is, because it's linked really to the revolution, the 1917 revolution and uprising. Prior to that, Russia really was more or less wholly agricultural. But Lenin and then Stalin were absolutely intent on industrialization. So you had a number of different factories springing up all over. Now, Fed, they were based in Kharkov, which is in Ukraine. Now, initially, the factory actually started out as a commune for the rehabilitation of, how would you put it, awkward or disenfranchised children. And they started out not by making cameras, but by making things like drills. However, in the 1930s, a gentleman by the name of Anton Semyonovich Makarenko decided it was about time that the Russians started to produce their own cameras. And of course, they went straight away and copied the Leica 2. So this would originally have been sold, this lens, with an early Fed. The initials Fed, F-E-D, are derived from Felix Edmundovich Dzerzhinsky. There's a D on the beginning of that, Dzerzhinsky. And he was the guy that set up the commune in the first place, but it was really Makarenko who was responsible for production of cameras and lenses. So there you go, it's a Russian lens. It's 1935, by quite a long way the oldest lens that I have. And as you probably know, I like to shoot vintage lenses on the Sony A7 because it gives me the same field of view that they were designed for. Having said that, this is a bit of a pig. Optically, oh dear, it's not exactly sharp. It's very low contrast, and you only have to give it the slightest hint of sunlight and it flares like crazy because it's uncoated. It's a Tessar design, 4 elements in 3 groups, very similar to the Elmar. It's nickel plated with a chrome plated barrel, and it is of course collapsible. The ultimate pocketable lens. Now that in itself gave me issues. You do have to be careful, by the way, if you try and put one of these lenses onto a DSLR, that if you collapse it, it doesn't foul the mirror. You could break the mirror very easily. It's quite safe with the mirrorless. However, that in and out movement, I didn't even think about it until afterwards, but I'll show you a couple of shots taken of Liverpool Town Hall at 3.5, 6.3 and f/18. Those are the 3 apertures. Now the one at 3.5 you can see is very soft at the edges. It's not too bad in the centre. f/6.3, you start to see some rather nasty marks coming up on the sensor. And at f/18, yes, those are the actual F numbers. It's the pre-war designation. But at f/18 you can clearly see the hair and the dust. And that was on a previously clean sensor. what was happening was that when I bought it, I'd been doing that with it, and the bits of dust obviously fell off the lens and onto the sensor. So that needed to be cleaned. What else is an issue with shooting this lens? Well, I'll tell you two things. I know it's at least 1935 because the focusing on this, it's roughly half a turn from closest focus to infinity. Earlier ones, it was more or less a 360 degree turn to get from one end to the other. It does also have the pre-war f-stop numbers going from 3.5 down to f18. So, in practice, focusing is difficult. It's 3.5 maximum aperture. I've had to increase the brightness of the LED and viewfinder to compensate. And on top of that, of course, using the manual focus assist and zebra, that's all well and good, but it's still very dim. And then the other issue is that, just let me extend it, you focus on your subject, which is fine, then you have to adjust your aperture, and you have to hold the focus to be able to close down the aperture ring, which is on the very front of the lens. Fortunately for me, this is not a very stiff aperture ring. Otherwise, you turn the aperture ring, if you don't hold the focusing, turn the aperture ring and it moves focus. Not the easiest of lenses to use, let's just put it that way. However, it's fun shooting stuff like this. You know, 1970s and 80s vintage manual focus lenses, they slow you down. This, by a factor of 2 times, really. It is really, really slow to use. But it's fun, and I love it. So that's why we came down to the Baltic Triangle. Tentative segue into the video, I know. But on a day like today, I just thought, you know what? Why not? Link it to its homeland, kind of. Bring you down to the waterfront. Let you see the lovely waterfront buildings down here. So now I'm going to go and take a few more shots. I have been out and about with it already. And don't be expecting anything mind-blowing. At 3.5, it's like shooting through a mist. Well, there we are. It's been a relatively successful outing this morning. I'm not quite sure how good the results are going to be. I've taken a couple of the Baltic Fleet public house over the road there. The proof will be in the eating. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, that's right. We'll have to see what the results look like when I get back and edit them. I'm going to be brutal with this lens. I'll show you the results straight out of camera. Thank you. And also when I've done my best to give you a half decent edit. None of these images are going to be anything worth shouting about. They might look better in black and white, some of them. Have to wait and see. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed a little bit of history and some of the stills at least. And until next week, I will see you and say enjoy your photography, be safe, bye for now.